just in a different format, not corporate.
Thank you, everybody. Our live audience here at Derivan Factory, and all of our people who are watching behind their home computers or office computers, maybe at this time of day. We're streaming this live, and it'll be recorded, so you can go home and watch it again if you need to. My name's David McLaughlin. I'm the sales manager here at Derivan, and today we're lucky enough to have Paul McCarthy here talking about how his mind works. So over to Paul.
Thank you.
Enjoy. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, David. Thank you and welcome everybody this afternoon. I want to just talk a little bit about how our brains and our minds process images, and why the picture plane and the picture making process works. And it actually works for exactly the same reasons, whether we paint in a traditional style, whether we paint in an abstract style, or whether we paint halfway in between. And I've brought along examples of works across all those gamuts. All the works are my own. I actually work in all mediums, oils, acrylic, watercolour. And so I'm going to just talk a bit about how and why those things happen and how they work, and in my brain. And just for the record, I don't have an arts degree, so this concept is just from out there, okay? So feel free to take it, throw it away, pick it up, do whatever you like with it. And if anyone has any questions, queries along the way, we'll address those as we go. How many here are painters, number one, or fiddle around with paint? Okay, and how many here have got a painting and started fiddle, 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 and the painting goes, oh, really good, really good, really good, really bad, and crap. All right? So also what I want to do is give you the tools to enable you to identify what's happening there and why that's happening up here. So why all of a sudden when we work on a flat plane, we get something that's looking exciting and involving to the viewer, and then all of a sudden it collapses. Okay? Because if we can understand how and why that's happening up here to the general viewer, we can hopefully step back from our works and take a more logical response in fixing them up. All right? So, we'll try and work logically here and start from the start. And I'm not going to paint a lot this afternoon. I will talk a lot, but not paint, so don't worry. But I'll get just a bit of something. Now, what colour are you using? What size brush? Doesn't matter. All right, don't ask. If I make, as I talk to the board very bad of me, if I make some marks and shapes on the board, okay, and we enclose them, what was that? I can hear. I am making dominoes. Not sure what number that one is, but there you go. All right, so if we just look at that, and you know, it's just a series of shapes, and there's not. It's just nothing. It's just there, and it just sits there, and it's okay, and it's fun. But what's happening? Now, I'm going to improve that to the nth degree, very, very simply. And then I'll just ask for a bit of feedback after that. So if we just... Oh, maybe I need a bigger brush for this. Wait a minute. We just... I'll try and do it from the side so you can all see. It doesn't really matter about that heavy black line. The main thing is the shapes that I want you to concentrate on. Now, can we see and do we agree that just that series of shapes now has become more involving to the viewer and more comfortable to look at straight away? And yet we've done nothing. But what have we done? Okay? So, and then there's also a mistake there on purpose. Well, not a mistake, just another thing. Can you see that once we let things run off the board and create a wandering through for the viewer, we've got the attention of our brain. And it's just more comfortable to look at, do we agree? Now, what's happening with this one is that the chain of pieces are still sitting around the edge. Can you see that? Okay, so if we introduce just one more shape, it will offset that. All right? Okay, so number one, for any sort of image making, we need to get the viewer involved from the start. We need to get them to be part of the picture and to actually dissolve within the picture plane process. So how do we apply that to a landscape, to a still life, to anything like that? I'm just going to grab another bit of paper and... Okay, so we follow that. So, we follow that one to the floor. I'll just get rid of that. Now I'll do just a passe landscape and then passe still life on each side. So, if we have a so-called still life, all right, and then we have a landscape of whatever. I'm very good at drawing. See how when they're just shapes contained within the picture plane, they don't work. And you know that if that was finished off and working, it would be boring to the viewer. So again, when we cut it down, we start to become involved with the picture. And see, even doing that on those couple of lines starts to create comfort up here. Okay, so even if, the other thing is running things together. All right? So even if we start to cut here. Okay, so that's the general line of things. And your brain loves line work in order to carry a theme through. And it also loves shape. And I want to talk about three main things: shapes, colour, and tone this afternoon. So that's the general layout and how we get a layout of a painting balanced, if you like, or involving to, or engaging to the viewer. Then we need to look at how we start to get a picture just working. So whereas that was looking at line, pure line work, I'm now just going to throw down pieces of tone, okay, the other end of the scale. And what I'm trying to do is actually build it together, so at the end of it all you'll see that every bit is needed, and it's understanding how and why to put those bits together. And then we'll go through the paintings and have a little chat. So if I throw down just tones, light, dark, just whatever is happening. That's the brush in the box, actually. I knew that cord was going to get in the way at some stage. Okay, doesn't matter what's on there, it's just tones that don't really relate as anything in particular. All right? However, can somebody just pass me a black? Tube of black. I'm just going to now introduce line work, just to show you, and I've done that just random, it doesn't matter which way we turn it up, and it's purely to illustrate why your brain craves line work in conjunction with tone. Okay? This is random, haphazard tone, but once we introduce a little bit of line, if we turn this into, and this is about as creative as we're going to get this afternoon. If we just turn this into a patch of bush with some trees. Can you see how that's starting to evolve from what's there? And we haven't changed the shape, but all of a sudden, hopefully your brain is reading this as rock and trees. And we haven't had to state the full trunk of the tree or the full rock or anything like that. It's the combination of that rough tone with suggestions of line which have put those images back into your brain. The other thing about it is that this line work here has a difference about it. So it's not, you know, when people start to draw in pencil and they have the same weight of line. There's a change in the weight of that line even though the tone is consistent. So even with a solid block colour, we can create interest and tone within that line work. And if we hadn't have done that, if I reduce those to this, can you see how it's going to flatten that whole picture plane off and create I won't say uninterest, a different type of interest. Can you see that? And we'll go over ways and means of using both those sorts of types of lines within your picture plane, and when and why to use those things. So that's line, and then that's tone, and tone with line. I want to talk a little bit about colour discord, but I'm going to actually show you those on the finished works, because it's a little bit more complex and we've got a limited sort of time. Okay, I'm going to just grab another picture that has some line work in it, and hopefully you'll be able to turn your brain off and just look at the pure paint and then read the line work into it and see the image. So this here, if we quickly look at that as just paint. Okay, in fact, if I did it this way. See, it's just, that paint doesn't really read as anything in particular. But if you have a look closely, there's cows drawn there. Can we see that? Hang on. Can you see that from there? Okay. So, our brains crave that little bit of line work within any sort of image play. All right? And it's getting that combination of those right. And we can all do it no matter how we paint. So I want to step forward into ways and types of painting. I'm just going to, now, where to start? We might start with a fairly haphazard sort of play based on that sort of theme. That question there? Question, query?
No, we just commenting on the imagery on
the horse?
No, on portrait.
Yeah.
No, the other way up.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's all.
And I saw a white house with a bunch of
Yeah. And you see how without the line you can't see anything, but that line will carry your brain to wherever. Now, can we all just do something and just squint and look at that way, just so that you can't dissolve any of that. And that general play of shapes and colours on there looks okay. And I can tell you, without even trying it, and I've never done it with this one, so hopefully it'll work. Now it looks awkward, squinting. Okay, so I want to tell you why that is and for you to understand. I also teach abstract painting, and I'll walk around the classroom and say, look, yours should be the bottom of the painting over there, or that should be the top, without seeing it the right way up, and that's why I said then this may or may not work. There are fundamental things within your brain and within a normal passage of, 90% or 98% of the population where those sorts of things will be consistent. I used to I often hand out a photograph of lichen taken on a rock, and those, if there's anyone who's been in my class, may have done this exercise with me. And it's just a photograph from above. There's no up or down, right or wrong, like that. Yet everyone will turn it one way or another to look at it. And on the back of that picture, I've written top and bottom. So the moral to that is there is a sequence of events as far as tone, shape, colour that grey matter says, I like that better. And it's similar to what was just happening then. It becomes awkward to look at, or it becomes okay to look at. All right? But if we know that within the painting plane, then we know how to correct those things or make them better. And then involves the viewer. All right?
Could I ask you to just come back to that?
Yeah. This other one? The lighthouse?
Yes, please. And tell me why it was so awkward when they had to work.
Oh, okay. Yep, sure. We've jumped the gun a bit, but yeah, okay. So I'll step forward and say, okay, I'm going to mask off some parts of other finished paintings to prove this sort of rule, okay? All paintings work on a discord, creating a discord. If we look at the picture plane and we think of it as dark, medium and light, as far as tone is concerned, we have to create a discord there. And we can create a discord by making one of those dominant. Now it can be dominant by occupying a larger or a smaller surface area. Okay, so two of them. For instance, in this one, the medium and the lights occupy about the same surface area and the darks are smaller. Okay, and I'll mask a bit of this off and we'll see that it'll collapse. Now, that doesn't answer your question, sorry, but it sort of leads to it. The other thing is that your brain craves darks on the bottom. And quite often on the bottom, on the right-hand side, even if you're left-handed. The reason for that is that, well, why I fathom that is, every time we walk outside, every time we're related to normality in life, there is sky above and something below. Trees, buildings, terra firma. There's something heavier. So, in a pure abstract, generally speaking, the weight, as far as tone is concerned, needs to be to the bottom. For that very reason. Okay, because our brains find it awkward when our world is upside down, because it's not a normal sequence of even abstract form. Yeah, the one round the corner. It probably would be. Now, there's some abstracts that work where there's colour and shape overall, and they work for other reasons, which we'll go through. And you should be able to turn those around in a few ways. There's also those rules of the, the 1/3, 2/3, picture plane, and then don't have anything pointing to the middle or pointing to the corners. I like to actually play with that. And I wouldn't advise students to go ahead and do those sorts of things, but I, as an artist, like to play with that and try and get it to actually balance. All right? Now, the other thing is, so that's tone, and then the other thing is the play of shapes. Okay? So can you see actual pieces that are broken up? They need to be some small, some medium, some large. Okay? And just as an abstract series of shapes on a page, they need to intertwine here so that we have a depth of field. All right? Now that doesn't mean we can't create an abstract that's pure shape. And later on I've got one here that is pure shape. But it needs to rely on pure shape so that there's small shapes, medium shapes, large shapes, and a discord in those. And then there's a discord in the colour, which I mentioned earlier. And we'll just move through. So does that answer that? So generally speaking, your brain will crave darks on the bottom because it's just a normal sequence of events. So moving on. What was I going to do? This one, which is very mould. But now this is under glass. So if it's shining out there, just let me know. I'll just tilt it forward. Can you see that from out there? Yes. Yeah.
If you have the dark tone at the other end with the same line.
Oh, side by side. Generally speaking, good question.
If you invert the way you had it before, then invert it.
Yeah, that's
again. Yeah. Now if you had that dark tone at the bottom.
As well.
Yeah.
Sometimes it will and sometimes it won't, but it generally needs to be a stronger dark tone. Because quite often I'll paint where there's cliff tops falling over the top, you know, looking down at oceans and things like that. So it's not that it can't be done, but you need to balance it in some way. All right? I thought you were going to actually ask about having the dark on the left or the right. Can you see how on the right and then even on the left, can you see that that's not as comfortable as that? Doesn't always work for everybody. Oh, well, it sort of does actually. So, all right. Now, this little picture here, can we see here the discord of that tone is the dark? Can we see if I eliminate the dark, the painting will collapse? Can you see that? All right. Now, the only thing holding that together, it's just mishmash of whatever there. It's those few lines. It's that line work that tells you it's patch bush. It's not those tones. It's a combination of all, but without that line it would look as much like the others as anything else. So try and make your paintings be an organised gobbledygook, an organised chaos, not just chaos. So chaos we can all make, but to organise it into a scenario that actually looks okay and works for us, we need to understand how and why that's happening. I'll swap now to something a bit more traditional for those that paint traditionally, and how we can apply that format and that formula to a traditional sequence of painting. I hope. Where have I got? I had a little here. Okay.
So when you refer to line work,
yeah.
are you always referring to a recognisable image or half recognisable?
Just a piece of line, and you'll see it in this next one actually. It's a good point. It doesn't have to be anything in particular. So can we see this back to a traditional now? But hopefully it works as a nice play of shapes and forms on there. Because we have things running off. You know, I actually painted this on site and very quickly. I mean, it's only a small painting anyway. But what is happening here is that these are running into each other. Remember when we had those shapes just floating? Can you see the bum of the cow is up here, just cutting through here? If it didn't do that and was floating within that place, that would look like a series of triangles and circles floating on that paddock. And it may sound like really minor things, but it's those really minor things that are extremely important. Because it's all the negative shapes that hold the painting together. Can we also see that in this painting, see this dark tone that just runs through all of it? Okay? But does your brain think that that's part of that tree? Not at all. People tend to want to resolve this item, then this item, then this item, then this item, then this item, rather than painting the picture as a whole. We need to address them in their entirety. Now, I'm going to just, on this one, talk a little bit about, remember I mentioned that colour discord? I'm just going to eliminate some marks on this painting, and that painting will go flat. Then we'll have to pump it up again. So, And I'm just putting this tape on because it's a warm tone, you'll see. I'll probably have to put them everywhere because it's going to... And you actually won't even notice that masking tape on there, hopefully. All right, there's just a little bit here I need to eliminate. Can we see what's happened there? It's become very warm. And the painting overall sits okay, but it's just a painting. If we introduce, so all of these colours so far used are all warms. There's warm yellows, warm reds, warm greens, and everything about the painting is warm. If we introduce a cool colour, and it doesn't matter what that cool colour is, but watch. Can you see everything starts to bounce? It pulls everything to life. Not just that. Look at it without. Look at the play of this piece of painting. Look at it once we introduce it. And it doesn't matter where you put that. It can be a dot, it can be a mark, and there's plenty of them there. But can you see that once we put those in, all of a sudden we bring in life across that picture plane. Do we follow that? Now, there is one extremely important adjunct to this. You can't just grab a colour and put it on there. Because it will scream, it will leap. You can't just go, all right, well, I'll grab that turquoise because I like it and go clunk. Because you know what? It'll look like you grabbed that turquoise and got clunk, and it'll look like a piece of paper stuck out and put on there. So how do we get over that? How do we eliminate that? Do we all agree first that that does actually add to the play of shape? Even, and this is where I'm just trying to justify what happens even in a traditional play of shape. Okay, so step further. The reason why that's not absolutely leaping off the board and screaming off there and you're thinking that it's not part of that picture is because that colour is in there. And that colour is in this grass. And that colour is in this. So, in essence, it's a cousin or part of what's happening. If it was not part of the picture plane, then it would leap. Okay? And I'm going to show you a couple of pure colourist type paintings where we can use that pure colour to make it leap. But if you want to do it in a traditional painting, it still works for exactly the same reasons. Alright? Questions, queries? Can we see in this one that the darks and the mediums occupy about the same surface area? And the light is the discord because it occupies a larger surface area. Can you see that? Now, let's move on. Any questions, queries about that?
If I was to mix perhaps some tone of the colours you've used
Yes.
into the turquoise,
Yeah.
is that another way I can blend it in?
It is, but what that will do is flatten that turquoise. Yeah. And you won't get as much jump. You know, I've got it on me. I like that colour. Yeah, if you put it into there, it'll just knock that back. Whereas what we're wanting to do is actually beef that up. And it's a funny thing, but if you don't have it, it's not going to work. And now, the other thing is not to state things. See how these cows, they're just shapes, and the buildings, they're just shapes. It's not a building painted, it's not that. I'm just going to bring up another traditional, then we'll move on to some other more out there sort of painting. But the main thing is just shape and always follow the form of an object with your paint. I'll do a little demo in that too, because that has nothing to do with tone, colour or anything like that, but everything to do with the direction of a brush stroke. So if we have a look at this one just quickly, and I'm not going to tape it off, but I'm just going to tell you, and I'll just hide it so that we can see. First of all, can we see that nothing here is really painted? They're just slabs. Remember I was saying it should be a series of abstract forms joined together. Have a look if we hide any part of this painting. You can't tell what it is. And you shouldn't be able to tell what it is. I could have done the same with the last one. they live together collectively. And by this being here, that tells you what that is. Do you follow? When we paint, we tend to overstate things and tend to be too deliberate with what's going on. Now, the colour discord in here, can we see if I eliminate, although this is quite cool green, if I eliminate this cold green through here, see that, well, it's actually just that limey green. Can you see the whole painting just becomes quite warm? Okay, so if that wasn't there, it would simply be a play of that sort of process. Can you see that? And it would, sure, it'd work as a painting, but not as well as, look what happens when you just throw that in. So can you see what that colour discord does there? It's a very important element to understand and get your brain around and to evolve. The other thing is that as artists, people get very lazy. I don't have an earth tone on my palette usually. Sometimes I do, but not usually. And I say it in this one because there's lots of earth colours there. I mix earth colours so that, because we tend to just plough into yellow ochre for the road, for the tree, for the stone. And we don't justify what sort of a brown that is, whether it's a warm brown, an orange brown, a grey brown. So we just get lazy. Whereas if we don't and we actually mix them, can you see that the play of work there becomes a bit more fun? All right, let's move on. That's actually an oil, but it doesn't matter what the medium is. Now, I work in all mediums, and that's a good question. When I work in oils or acrylic, I work quite differently, which you'll see, because they lend themselves to different ways of painting. All right?
Oh,
Yeah.
besides the small one in red,
Yep.
that dark, is there a reason for that? Have you used your signature to do anything?
Oh, don't ask my brain that. You only have to visit my brain, I have to live with it. I don't know. It's just, well, it's just with the roofs there, and this is just with the darks there. Just so it's, yeah, and sometimes you actually need it. Can you see without that there? So the signature can be a design element. Usually when they're larger paintings, it doesn't become a design element, but absolutely when it's smaller, it does. And you can see that without that, it wouldn't work as well either. But I would have just introduced a blob of red in the grass, and your brain won't go, what's that blob of red? It simply won't do it. It'll just go, oh, okay. We've just got to trust our brains sometimes. Not yours. Now, I was just, might be here. Yeah, just one last little one here. I said to someone, well, just fix it by putting a blue tree. Now, can you see that? And they said, and this is a little demo I did up in Newcastle, but people would say, well, a blue tree is just, it's going to look absolutely ridiculous. Well, it doesn't. Or maybe it does. I don't think it does, so it doesn't. But can you see how, just the introduction of that, can you see how without it? And can you see now, having told you where it's involved, you can see perfectly in this one where it's involved. Okay? The other thing is, remember I said just run things into each other, and this doesn't matter whether it's watercolour, acrylic, oils. Like I said, they all work for the same reason. Can you look and see this big shape? One shape. That shape runs into that shape. Does your brain think that that is part of that? Okay? Your brain will undo those things. What you have to do is look. Painting and drawing is a discipline in observation. You just have to look.
So are you saying that the bluey colour in the left foreground was there before the blue tree?
Correct.
Oh,
It was, I'd had it on my palette. So in order to create that colour discord, because these are all these warms and what have you, I introduced it with that blue. And in a tree, you know, a blue tree. I mean, the tree wasn't actually blue, even though I was on those drugs that week. Okay, so that's so does everyone get that when we talk about traditional painting, or talk about that one with the drawing and what have you? So if we then look at more contemporary type of painting or drawing, I'm just going to now put up some where it has a different sort of bend to it, but hopefully you'll get the idea of what's going on. So we'll start with this one that's midway in between. And again, this is one I just blocked in with just 3 colours on my palette. Now, it needs to be loose but accurate is usually what I tell my students. Even to start as an abstract. But can you see that even the play of colour and shape and tones has an interesting feel to it? This is actually a building on the site at Charles Sturt Uni. So I was taking a class out there, but we just took a palette with, I think there was just 3 colours, I just took 3 colours on the palette, and just to block it in. But block it in paint. Just draw in paint. You know, people draw up in pencil and then colour it in. Why? Just draw it in paint. Can you see that the process is fun? The process is involving and engaging. When you go out there and look for a subject, you have to get a reaction from it, not me. So if you hate buildings and, you know, are confronted with that, there's no way you'd ever paint it. And that is fine, you know. Find a subject that you find interesting and you find evolving or something about it and work with it. Now, I'm just going to eliminate 2 parts of this building and you'll see how not even I would find that building interesting to paint. So the little dovecote at the top where there was this brilliant light hitting it, can you see if it was the wrong time of day and that light was equivalent to the rest? And that would have eliminated, oh, I might do it from this side. Can you see if that had eliminated that? There's no painting there. Okay? So I encourage people to walk around a subject and find the subject. So keep walking until you can see those flanks. And understand that when you see those little glimpses of light and those pieces appear, particularly when you're plein air painting, pop them in. And understand that why, when I look at this section of building from here, 10 feet that way, because we eliminated that, why does it look flat and boring? And what's happened to make, oh, I really like that. But what's making it that I really like it? And again, it's back to that, those thirds. Can you see that the discord here is the mid-tone? And we've got small lights and small darks. But again, we have that discord. The other thing is there's a lovely breakup of shape. Okay, we've got big shapes, little shapes. Any questions, queries? It's just to show you how to, start. Scruffy fellow down the front.
Actually going back a little bit, but can you, I'm not sure what you mean exactly by depth of field. I know you mean dimension.
Oh, okay.
3D dimension and so on.
To create, back with those shape ones, when we create something that's woven, so it has a foreground, a midground and a background, okay? And actually it's a timely spot to bring it up because I've got, oh look, I'll just show you a thing on a bit of still life where we need to create those things. I'll grab a bit of paper which may resolve what I'm trying to say there, hopefully. Hang on. Hold that thought. Perspective is extremely important and extremely critical, says he off-site. So, if we just go back to still life for a minute, and you'll see why I've picked still life. And again, why people say still life is boring or whatever. We need to create a walkthrough, even when we've got pure shapes. So a painting can hold together if it's pure shape. There's nothing wrong with that. But if it was a still life, and we set up a still life, and we sit down and look at it at a table, all the bottoms of those items, whatever they might be, are all going to be relatively on the same plane. Okay? So they're going to line up like soldiers and look boring. That's why I tend to set up still life on the floor, so that it spreads those items. Can we see if I simply, I won't do it with the full glass, if I simply put these things on that plane about your eye height, can you see how they disappear behind each other? Whereas if I lower them, whoa, to the floor, you'll see between them. So you'll actually see that gap, and it'll give you that walkthrough. So how that translates in a painting is that these things start to go, and then we get the bottle behind, you follow? And then this. So we create spaces between those objects, and we create a walkthrough. And that's what this piece of light does there, in that landscape. Can you see if I eliminate that? But I specifically walked there to grab that piece of light. There was a small hedge here. But if we didn't have that, that would become a flat plane. Okay? So even that's why landscape, still life, they relate. Abstract, realistic, they all relate for the same sorts of reasons. Now, if we have a look at, okay, so this still life, and just in a more bolder manner and a more deliberate attack, okay? And we can see that it's just pure shape. But can you see that if we eliminate it down to that central bit, it's not going to work? Can you see that? So if we just grab that piece there, it's not going to work. And we've got that colour discord, haven't we? And we've got that shape, we've got that tonal discord. So why isn't it working? So we don't have that shape discord. Can you see that? And that's why the three of them are important together. Do we follow that? It'll work for all sorts of patches and pieces of it. But can you see how there's little pieces of it that all of a sudden become exciting? Why is it becoming exciting? What's it making it exciting? That discord. Or this. Look, that becomes boring. Or that becomes boring. Can you see? So long as we create that change, so long as we create that difference, it will start to work. Okay? Questions, queries? All confused? Now the colour discord in this one is probably this turquoise. It's not quite finished, this painting, but you get the idea of how that play of big, little and small shapes. Again, I want to get some of these small shapes off the edge of the board. Can you see how they're almost contained? And remember, see how even something like this with small shapes, and when we've even divided it up, it becomes like that very first image, just floating shapes. So what I need to do, and why I've left it at that point, is so that can we see how that needs to happen? And if we do that over here, see how that straight away starts to improve it? 2 seconds and we can improve a painting. But understand what's doing it. Understand what's making your brain look at things that way. Now, remember I mentioned that I would never say to put something in the middle of a page or to a corner or to... I sometimes do, and I'll just put one up that... Okay. Practically in the middle, but hopefully it works. And again, it's just a nice play of shape and colour. But they're just pieces. Now, can we see on this that they're not really hard edges? Can you see that? If they were really hard edges, it will become awkward to look at in that format. Doesn't mean you can't do it that way. But if you paint this way, halfway in between sort of thing, you need to keep all of those edges consistent. So the thing is, you need a consistent hand throughout the picture plane. You can't have that and then all of a sudden throw a bit of this into the bottom of it. It simply won't work. All right? And generally speaking, most people paint, I paint all different ways. Don't ask my brain how that happens, but I think it's like when you put on music. Sometimes you put on different types of music because you're in a different mood. So just understand that it's still working for the same reasons. There's that play of shape, there's that play of colour, and you can still do it with things pointing through the centre of the board if you're careful. But I wouldn't suggest that people get into that sort of thing early on. There's a little one here that I did on site, and it was done at Whitecliffs. And again, can you see how this works almost just on shape? And if this was just pure shape, it would still just work. Okay? The colour discord there is again this cool turquoise that's sprinkled throughout, because the rest of the play of that is that hot outback. The other thing is, see how they're just pieces. It doesn't matter what they are. And I did it on site, and this was just a junkyard. But I like junk and I like those bits and pieces. But can you see how this still works for exactly the same reasons as those first ones? It's no different. It's just a different way of creating that image. So when we're in the painting and picture producing concept, what we're trying to do, like I said before, painting is just a discipline in observation. We need to translate what we're seeing out there onto a board in a format that is us. So work out at what bucket you're at and push to there. And it doesn't mean that one's better or worse, but there are rhymes and reasons and ways of improving each way of painting. I used to paint very traditional, and I used to paint from photographs. I never work from photographs, and I always work on site now, or from drawings. So it's just a thing. So I have students who want to work from photographs, and that's fine. And they want to work up to a very traditional photographic type painting. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't make it better or worse than this sort of thing. It just makes it different. But the reasons why they work is the same, okay? That makes sense? Now, this last one here is just pure shape. And I've sort of left the pure... Oh, and it's got a colour discord, of course. Because remember, you were asking about the 3-dimension. And I said, well, you can actually do it with pure shape. All right? And when we do it with pure shape, you need to actually just push the shapes so that... I'll just move that. Do you see that? It's just a play of shape and colour. So this was done down at the back end of Blackwater Bay there, where that last bit of the working harbour's left. You know, from the crescent on the canal. Yeah, it's standing on that canal there. Now, can we see this funny green? If I eliminate that, can you see that it becomes a very hot painting? And that's actually splattered back and in through here. But can you see without it, that collapses? But can you see that it has a play of small shapes, medium shapes, large shapes? The overall surface area has that sort of shape, colour and tone. If we tie the three together, doesn't matter if it's like this or traditional, they will still look better and work up here for the same sorts of reasons. The main thing is, in the painting process, is the negative spaces. The spaces around things. The objects are easy to paint. It's the gobbledygook in between. It's like, see this here? The trees and the mountain, that's easy to paint. This is the hard bit. This is the bit that makes it interesting. Those tiny pieces. All right? I've got one here of a back end of a classroom that I got sick of teaching them, so I painted them. Just really quickly. But most people would panic and they throw in the people. And then they go, oh, and then I'll put a table there and I'll just put a chair and I'll just put whatever. And it looks blank and empty. Whereas when you look at that classroom, look at what's holding it together. This muck. This muck. Stacks of blue chairs. Who put blue chairs in? But can you see, if we just eliminate that and simplify things to the nth degree, it's nothing. It's nothing. So, literally paint exactly what's there. If it's just a shape, just a tone, Put it in. Don't worry about... See, we always worry about making it look like a something. Don't make it look like a anything. Never try and paint something. Just simply put the shape. Can you see how the shapes together work? And even if we were to simplify the background and go, oh, well, I'll just leave that out, or I'll just leave that out. Just don't. I'll just conclude with, I want to just go over something on why we don't change things and why we don't eliminate things in the picture process. But do you agree that that's what's holding that together? It's got nothing really to do with the people. The whole thing is the people. But what makes it interesting and gives it an atmosphere is all the crap in between. And the crap is the hardest thing to paint, not the items on the page. It's those bits in between. So, having said that...
Can I just ask?
Yeah.
What is...
Do you do children's parties? No, sorry.
What are you painting first? The bits in between or the...
Oh, that's a very good question. I actually just paint darks, and there's... Oh, it's going to... No, it's okay. I'm just trying to think if it's in my car. I've got a still life that is blocked in. You can tell what it is, but it's just blobs. Just dark blobs absolutely everywhere. So no, I would just do that, then these black lines, then this, then this, and this, and this. Just the darks, no matter where they are. It's not, and that's the whole point. You don't paint this, then this, then this. It's like if I said to you, paint or draw me that tube of paint. Now, probably all of you would draw the outside of the tube. Then we draw the label, and then we'd attach the lid. Okay? So when we draw that, it has elements. It has a lid, has a label, and then it has the rest of the body. So treat this as a lid, label, rest of the body. You follow? So that's what we're drawing. So if I put these like this together, I'm not drawing that, then that, then that. I'm drawing that. It's got nothing to do with resolving that, then resolving that, then resolving that. So we don't resolve here, here, here. We resolve the picture. So in this one, just the darks, dots, slabs. And actually, if you come up and have a look at this later, or any of them, you'll find that I like to work and just throw one piece of paint on and stop, and that's it. So, except for that still life. But usually there's nothing under these. They're deliberate, pointed marks. If I work the other way, then it'll lend itself to those broader strokes with the drawing through it. So think very carefully about the picture plane and put in those darks. And the other reason why we work with darks, we've got a white surface or a toned surface when we start. So you can't show a highlight. It's a logical way of working. You've got to show a dark. The main thing to remember is when we draw a line or when we stop a piece of paint. So when we're drawing and we draw a line, and when we're painting and we stop a piece of paint, the only reason you've done that, the only reason, is because there's a change in tone. If there's no change in tone, we continue that piece of paint. If there is a change in tone, we stop that piece of paint. Doesn't matter whether it's of the same item. Don't worry about making it belong to the same thing. Have a look at this black line, running, 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 running. Do we think that it's all linked? No, of course not. Your brain will undo those things. Same as with the trees and underneath that other one. Your brain will just undo those things. But if you don't join them, it'll start to look like stuck-on pieces. Now, this looks like stuck-on pieces, but it's controlled stick-on. Does that make sense? And so it doesn't matter how you put it together, as long as you put it together right. But it's those sorts of elements that make it hold properly. Now, I just want to talk... Oh, any questions, queries? Sorry.
So that black line area that you said followed,
Yeah.
that's your walkthrough.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And you create those in also, there's also a cream bit through there too, if you sort of want to wander. So you create those in all sorts of different ways and forms, but if you don't have them there, it becomes awkward for your brain to process, that's all. And can we see, even with this one, look, if I eliminated this to this, just this area, even if you don't like abstract, look at that. It doesn't work, does it? They're all the same size, they're all the same shape, they're all the same weight, they're all the same importance. So of course it's not going to work. But understand why it's not going to work. Okay? If you can understand why, then hopefully we can apply that to how we paint.
So why in art galleries do you see paintings that are just flat?
I don't know. They're trying to advertise paint.
They're trying to pull one over.
Now, the other thing is, back to this one, and then I've got some very intricate drawings there which I'll pass around. Just some... Oh, I'll do it on the back one of those. Other critical issues. Remember I said direction of paint? There's pencil marks on that, but they mean nothing. I'll just splash on all of that. Be very precious with your work. So, if we have proverbial, what's happening? Someone gone to sleep. How dare they? A tree, you know, always chuck it in, you know, just by a riverbank like this, all right? This is water down here. Are we following the bouncing ball? Okay. Can we see that that just puts into our brain just a gentle sloping sandbank up? All right? If I, rather than this, put this here, rather than this here, can we see that side? It's just flat. Okay, and gentle slope. See that? Automatically puts a bank into there. Always follow the form of the object. So the actual brush mark is critical. When you actually chisel things in, follow the form of the object. If it's a tree, follow the foliage. If I had done that tree like this, it's not going to work as well. All right? See that? Just doesn't translate as well. The other thing is hairy marks. No good. Use a truckload of paint. Paint like you own the company. Here. A bold mark, a deliberate mark, always translates better. So long as it's loose but accurate. It needs to be an accurate silhouette, right size, right shape. But so long as it's put on there, it will always translate heaps better. All right? Now, when we're drawing, who put all that on the floor? You know how they say if the tree's too big or if the house isn't working, just move it or just don't. Walk around the subject until the subject becomes better. All right? Now, I'll show you why. If I have a building and just some shapes, all right? And that's our building in real life when we're looking at it. And I decide to draw that. And I go, oh, look, I really like that tree bigger because it's annoying. It's bugging me. Or I really like to move that window, or whatever it may be. So I go, all right, well, look, just make him bigger because he looks better next to that house because, you know, they do. So that's fine. And then we keep drawing and we keep drawing and then we keep drawing. Can you see what's happened? All of a sudden, somewhere around the picture plane, we've drawn this item, okay, and then we've bodged this one up. But we've drawn it in scale to the item that we've changed. Do you follow that? And it will happen somewhere around the picture plane, and it may be a building, a fence, a person, and you'll get them completely out of scale or out of whack. Do you follow? Now, the reason why you'll get them out of whack is because that thing was bugging you in the first place. So it was something that you hated it in the first place anyway. So even when you get further around the picture plane, and it may be a mountain like this, that all of a sudden you do this, and you go, oh my God, how did I end up with all that? So don't change things. Because it was bugging you in the first place, when you get to here, rather than drawing by flicking back to the item beside, you're drawing relative to what was pissing you off, to put it in the vernacular. Because it was annoying, your subconscious just goes back and it'll do it. And that's how you get your drawings out of whack. So walk around your subject matter. Find the subject matter. Like that dovecote with the lighter on the side. Okay? So I had a class painting, and I don't think I've got it with me, but basically we were on a roadside. There was, it was very long and flat. She was up at Grafton, and there was just a silvery line on the edge of the hill on the bottom, and there were some cow shapes, and then there was a tree and a fence out this way. Oops. Okay, just shapes like that. Now, and that's how most had just done it. And it's cut in half, it's boring, it's uninteresting. I told one girl to take 3 steps that way, and lo and behold, all of a sudden, this happened. But can you see how much that improves that? And that was literally walking from here to there. And those that were here last weekend when I was pointing out stuff along the river, does exactly the same thing out there. So understand how and why. And this is exactly the same thing to that very first illustration of the floating shapes. Can we see that floating shapes here? So our brains like things that get cut off and for the viewer to be involved. So everybody follow that? So don't change those things. If necessary, and look, only if necessary, change those things back in your studio when you're away from the painting, away from the subject. But don't do it while you're there because you'll just run into hiccups. All right? So just do it purely for what's there. The other thing is, I'll just grab, the more detailed a subject is in relation to that, the easier it is to draw. Not harder. Get it out of your brain. It's not harder, it's easier to draw, all right? We just look at it and think it's too complex, but just looking for something complex. Oh, here we go. You probably can't see that. I'll pass this around. It's just the rocks down at Sydney, but if I changed or eliminated any of these shapes and changed their size, I would have to invent a passage between them. And in order to invent that, it would change the scale and it simply wouldn't work. It just doesn't work. It's not rocket science.
So, Paul, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
When you're painting that abstract one of the ships,
Yeah.
did you have it in your head what you were painting, or did you just throw the paint on and then...
I threw the paint on side in a drawing. Okay, but I did in that case do it loose. Okay, so for that sort of painting and that, yeah, you can undo it somewhat. So having said keep it all to scale if you want to go. But, if you're trying to get things in sync and in interquilter, you need to keep it in scale. And even those boats, they need to still be in scale because that stanchion behind it and the crane, see, I can picture Necklace there and the boxes on the left. If I put them too far out of scale, they'll look silly as shape. Because, did that clump of boats look okay? Anyway, as a play of shape. And the reason is that those things are still to scale.
Right.
All right? I tend to just do that. It's just my head, you know. As I said at the start, it's only my head telling you these things. You can feel free to agree or disagree, but hopefully it will unlock how and why our brains work. I'll just swap to one last little scribble. Because we tend to overstate things, and just reminded me because you're talking about boats. And I'll pass this around too. That probably travels better. Can we see that from back there? Now, they're not boats drawn, okay? They are just shape. But they're shape drawn from real life, so they're exactly what was there. They were what I could see from where I was. If I couldn't see the bottom of the boat, bugger it. Does your brain care? Your brain didn't care when it received the information on site, so why would it care there? Why would it care there? The other thing is, I don't mind if students and people work from photographs, but who does this? To work out what's going on. Do you follow? Hands up those who've ever done that. So, if this was the photograph that we're copying, and we do this to find information, I haven't got a photograph, but if I had a photograph, at that distance you could still tell what it was. Even from out there, you could tell me whether it was a house, or whether it was a boat, whether it was a hill, whether it was a portrait. So your brain has received 2 seconds of information to tell me what it is. So why does it need any more up here? It doesn't. It's us that need to put more information in there. And you don't. So that's where you've got to unwind yourselves and only put the information that we need. Because we tend to overstate things and over make marks that are unnecessary and that are not there. That are not there. Painting and drawing is a discipline in observation. All right? Is that enough to confuse you for the day? So, any final questions, queries?
I've got a question.
Yeah.
When you're painting outside, what sort of a palette do you use?
Oh.
How many colours?
I usually, if they're blocking something in, like that building that I showed you, I will block in 3. And A red, A yellow and A blue. But in that one it was, like magenta and a yellow, I don't know what that was, a warmer yellow, probably yellow deep or something like that. And the blue was a French ultramarine. So not any particular, but just A red, A yellow, A blue. And then just work with those, and that'll give you or translate the mood. And if it's a hot day, use the hot colours. If it's a cool day, use the cooler end of the spectrum. It's not rocket science, but the reasons why they work is the same. And as painters, you'll find that you still plough into the same collection of colours anyway when you do a painting. You'll find yourself going back to that bucket of browns or mauves or greens, or that bucket of bright colours, or that bucket of cool colours, because that's just human nature, that's who we are. But understand how we can work with those and how we can enhance those by introducing those discords. So just 3 colours on site, but if I take a full palette, I just take 2 reds, 2 yellows, 2 blues.
So you mix your turquoise?
Oh, I take that, no, cobalt teal. Can't beat cobalt teal. I used to mix turquoise, phthalo blue, phthalo green. Yeah, give you a really good turquoise. And sometimes with a tiny bit of lemon yellow, we'll tweak that turquoise. And I think you've run out of questions. You've had your 6. No, it's all right. Any others?
When you do painting out,
Yeah.
I don't know what they call it, but when I
It's called painting.
Yeah, no, I don't know what they call this thing. Do you take that piece of cardboard with the hole cut?
No.
You just ignore and
Look,
make whatever you see.
yeah, and look, I'll teach my students to, No matter what orientation, size of board or whatever. In fact, we'll do that exercise right now. Grab this first one, doesn't matter what it is, just as a panel. All right, now, if you divide that piece, so don't worry about how big or small it is, you just divide, and this doesn't matter, halves, thirds, whatever. Divide that in half that way, all right, and simply put your arm at full arm's length. You cannot possibly fit more than that to that, whatever you're looking at on your picture. End of story. Really simple. Don't complicate things. Okay, so if you're using that much in your view, then we've got to divide this into two. So we know that I can only go from that piece of post to that piece of wall. If I want to include more or less, either walk backwards, walk forwards, or divide it into three. 1, 2, 3. So if I divide it into three, I've narrowed down my field of vision, okay? But I then have to divide this into three as well. So I can only fit that much up and down. And that'll give you the exact, not roughly, not approximately, that will give you the exact orientation of that piece of paper. And it doesn't matter how big, small, whatever that is. If you want to do it one-to-one and you're faced with a great big vista, then that, okay, I can fit a whole brush and then that much. Now, the only drawback to that is the closer you are to your subject, the more opportunity for error. Okay? So, because at this arm's length I can fit in 2 people. And if I move just that far, I've just eliminated one of them. Okay? Because we're closer to the subject. The further away your picture plane is, the less opportunity for error. Okay? Does that make sense?
From a distance is really true.
Pardon? Comment.
From a distance is really true.
That's right. Now you can work close up. If you're working close, and I still do it sometimes with still life, work really quick. Don't go fishing for that size. Because for instance, if I measured these 2 items on the floor, look, do it there, I got that. Do it there, and I got that. And it's only that much difference each time. Multiply that by 4. Hello? So do it quick. The other thing is, if they are close, and even if they're further away, always come from the same reference point. So we'd hold up our brush and go, okay, that occupies that. So I come there and just make a mark on my board, then come from that same reference point in. So there, into the tree. Put where the centre of the tree is, come from that same reference point and come to the side of the building. Mark it. Come there and the other end of the building and mark it. So every time, come from the same reference point, be it a tree, a fence post or whatever. Because if you take little nips, you're going to get it wrong. But if you take it from there in, you'll get it right. And straight away, you'll be able to plot that left to right. And then there is no way in the world that it can't fit on your board. There's no way. All right? Does that make sense? Okay. So that's how we get the orientation of the board. Any others? Yes? Scruffy fellow down the front.
Last one, I promise.
That's all right.
You know how you talked about working from photographs before?
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that, whether you do or don't. What if the photograph is taken using a zoom lens?
Yep.
Can you still take the picture as it is in the photo? Because you know how a zoom lens can alter
Curve it, yeah.
depth of field.
Yeah. It will change things, and this is the other reason why. Look, people come in and they'll have a wonderful photograph. And I also do a little bit of commercial photography, but there is no way I would photograph something to paint. Or if I was doing commercial photograph, that is a photograph. It's a different medium, it's a different type. So for that, where you zoom in tightly on things, they can work wonderfully as a photograph. But even if you painted it photorealist, it would look strange. Because as a photograph, we believe it. But as a painting, it's not going to work. Yeah. Okay? So understand, some photographs are purely photographic subject. And that's just, you need to just look at it for sensibility, really. You know, don't try and complicate things. When we complicate things, we go a bit nuts. The only other, one last thing, if you're doing still life, paint it life size or smaller, okay? Don't come just a bit bigger than life size. If we paint an orange that's this size, that's okay. And if it's involved with everything else. If we come just a little bit bigger than real life, it starts to look gaudy and awkward. So with still life, keep things life size or under, not just over. Unless you're going gigundo, enormous. Don't get them close to right. Get them right or smaller. It's just another one of those brainiac things. Oh, and one last other brainiac thing, then I will leave you. I could go on forever, but I know I'll get shot if I do. In still life, don't cut off bottles or hard objects because your brain finds that awkward in the picture plane. You can cut off organic things like flowers and that. Let them run out of the picture, but don't let half a bottle or half a cup or something like that on the edge of a board. Just looks awkward to look at. Same as a tree trunk on the edge of a painting. You know, you don't put a tree. You always make sure it's within the picture plane for exactly the same reason. That's why they work. Buildings are a bit different. And so are plates or things that sit flat on the surface plane. So books, pallets, plates, anything that sits flat, your brain's comfortable with having those things cut up. But not generally pots or things that stand up. All right? Any other questions, queries?
No more questions?
No more questions?
Last chance.
Okay.
Next Friday, this last Friday of every month except for December and January when we all go on holiday. So the 27th of November, Mignon will be here to tell us how she makes her colours pop, and maybe she'll make your colours pop too. And Paul knows Mignon, she's fantastic.
Oh, yeah, she is. She's very, very good.
So, thanks again, Paul.
Thank you. Ciao.